I think I'm safe. There's no way Anbernic will find me now.
You'll be done when I say you're done!
Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Mikhailov from Team Retro, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. So 2024 brought us our fair share of Anbernic devices, and as you just saw in my wonderful intro with Nefarious, they just keep coming. This is the Anbernic RG406H. This Android-based handheld is interesting to me because it seems like it takes all the lessons Anbernic learned from its handheld production this year and it's mashed them all into this wonderful package. So in this video, we're going to put this device through its paces and find out if it's worth your hard-earned dollar bucks. So let's dive in and get to work. At time of recording, the Anbernic RG406H can be pre-ordered directly from Anbernic's website, starting at about $168 US. The unit I'm using is a transparent purple model sent to me by Anbernic for the purposes of this review. As is always required, all opinions are my own, I'm not being paid, and they are not seeing this video before it is published. So with that, it's time to hop on our mount and ride on into, you guessed it, Spec Town. The Anbernic RG406H is powered by a Unisoc T820 processor. The GPU is a quad-core Mali G57. The device has 8GB of LPDDR4X RAM and 128GB of internal storage, with expansion being a micro SD card slot. The screen is a 4-inch IPS screen with OCA lamination and a 950 by 720 resolution. Giving the device life is a 5000 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi built in, as well as Bluetooth 4.2. The device ships with Android 13. So let's go ahead and do a quick unboxing, and I think we all know what to expect here. Inside the box is the device itself, a user manual, screen protector, and USB-C cable. Alright, let's go ahead and tour the Anbernic RG406H. Again, let's go ahead and start at the top here. We have a very similar bumper mechanism to the RG Cube XX that I recently reviewed. So it's got that nice ergonomic hold here to where you can put your fingers just like this, and then you could reach the triggers and the buttons just as necessary. Let's go ahead and do our sound test. So yeah, these are actually very loud and clicky. I would say very much on the loud side, especially if you are trying to play this quiet. I would say that this is more than likely the loudest part of the whole entire device. But if I were to hold this up here and just do regular, like I was playing it, it's not as invasive if you're just hitting it like once or twice. If you're playing a fighting game and you're hitting those Hadoukens and everything just like that, then yeah, you are going to get quite a bit of noise here. That is quite the clicky sound. Want to do a shake test while I'm here? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That is a solid device. I feel like we haven't needed to do the shake test in a while with some of these I don't know that I want to call this premium, but I guess this is definitely a mid-range device. So it makes sense that everything would be a little bit more tightly packed and less likely to be loose and shake around. I've never really seen an issue with modern Anbernic devices and rattling and shaking, so it's nice to hear that this one is very quiet. Except for these. These are not quiet. Let's go ahead and take a look at these triggers. These are analog triggers. I've heard different conflicting reports, especially on the transparent purple model, of these triggers being somewhat squeaky and noisy. But let me go ahead and mine are not. So that may be an issue that's happening, but mine seem to be fine on this device, and I have the transparent purple device. Up here at the top, power button, volume, as well as exhaust here. There is active cooling, and in high performance mode, this can get pretty noisy. No I/O on the sides. Make room for these ergonomic grips. You have your circle D-pad. Let's go ahead and do our sound test for that. Not terrible. Very, very tall joysticks here. They are Switch style joysticks. These are very, very tall joysticks, obviously, with the LEDs around them. We know how I feel about LEDs, but we're not going to talk about that. And these are taller than your average Anbernic joysticks. It's actually surprisingly tall. And these do come off. So if you really, really wanted to trim them down, you probably could take a flush cutter and trim this top down a little bit and then put the joystick back on. I'm sure you can also swap out for other joystick caps if you have them. These joysticks are serviceable. Now, it is kind of nice to have a 4x3 device that has joysticks at the top, because if you take a look at the Retroid Pocket Mini, let's go ahead and compare these really quick. They're obviously more or less the same size. This is a bit of a smaller screen, but it is an OLED screen. Bigger screen, but IPS. They both are nice and light to the touch, but this is D-pad centric and this is joystick centric. But because the Anbernic RG406V is a little bit taller, that means that you do have a little bit more comfort as far as reaching for the D-pad or the joysticks. There's not discomfort here either way. And this worked out well on the Anbernic RG Cube because it had that same taller form factor, so reaching for the D-pad is not a pain in the neck, making you necessarily want a D-pad centric device. Now for retro gaming, I more than likely will reach for the Mini over the 406H any day. But if I want to play something that's a little bit more joystick centered, like N64, I think this would be a better fit. Anbernic button, which is very typical, that'll take you to the Anbernic launcher, a home and back button, and start and select on the right as opposed to up here, which that's a choice I'm not a fan of. I like them to be more Steam Deck centered than on the left and right, but it is something I can work with. Normally when I'm running a game in RetroArch, I'll use select as my hotkey and start as quit, and then I could just hold one and press the other, or I can hold select and access a menu or whatever else. But typically on a device where start and select are on the right, that's not really all that feasible. So I'll set my hotkey to the left joystick button, and I'll set quit to the right joystick button, L3 and R3, and then I'll still set my menus and FPS counter and stuff as necessary on the face buttons and the shoulders, but I'll use this as my hotkey instead of select here. Not a deal breaker, but I'm still not really all that much of a fan. iNeo does this all the time, and I'm not a fan of it there either. Let's go ahead and take a look at the face buttons. We're just judging the travel here. As a matter of fact, if I take the Y button here and I push it down, yeah, you could see that these buttons don't get flush with the device. That may not necessarily be a bad thing. They don't feel bad. They feel like good buttons. Let's do the sound test. Oh yeah, these buttons aren't bad at all. You know, that's serviceable. A little bit of noise, but it's not a deal breaker. Then, take a look on the bottom. You got micro SD, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, USB-C, and downward facing speakers. I wish these were front facing speakers, but it is what it is. This is how they chose to design it. A big fan of this design on the back. This is a very ergonomic design, actually rivaling the Retroid Pocket Mini that I mentioned before, and both of these devices are equally comfortable. You could also see you have your intake here on the bottom, very similarly to a Nintendo Switch, and it is out of the way of your hands, so you're not really going to feel that heat going in or that air going in as you're holding this device. Whereas here, you might feel that a little bit only because you're holding the device here. So you may feel something, you may get some more. You can clearly see that the fan is here right behind the holes in the device for the intake, and then your exhaust is right here. Whereas here, intake is kind of out of the way. You do have a bit of a heat shield here, and then you could see your fan due to the fact that this is a transparent model. You can see the fan is right here, which gives your exhaust here. So active cooling for this device due to the fact that we are running Android, and we can get a surprising amount of power out of this thing, which we're going to showcase in a little bit. I want to take a minute and compare this to a couple of other handhelds. So I want to start with the Anbernic RG Cube. This is the OG Cube, the Android-based version, and believe it or not, I actually prefer this over the H700 model, the RG Cube XX. Now, don't get me wrong, I do really like the RG Cube XX, but this is more for a Game Boy machine, Pico 8, that type of thing. But for DS gaming, I definitely gravitate more towards this device because then you can put the two screens on top of each other because it's Android. You have native Android drastic standalone for remapping and all that. And again, this is a very comfortable device, and you could see a lot of design similarities here. You've got similarities in the shoulder and trigger designs. You have similarities in the exhaust, but most importantly, if you look at the back, you've got very similar ergonomics. You've got this nice textured line that have been on a lot of Anbernic's devices lately. And what I would almost argue is that the 406H is kind of a culmination of everything Anbernic learned this year. So it's really taken kind of the best aspects of every device that they've made and they've put it in this device. This is almost a greatest hits of Anbernic for 2024. I'll give you an example of what I mean. This device was well known for its cardinal snapping in the joysticks to the point where the Gamma Squeeze actually was able to release a fix for it through the software. Whereas this has a clear change in the joysticks, and I'm thinking part of that reason is to address cardinal snapping. All right, so with that, let's jump right in and we'll do some gameplay testing. I'm actually... What?
Hey, buddy. Guess what season it almost is?
It's almost Christmas.
Tax season. That's right. We got to get you all those dividends and reductions and capital gains.
Tax season already?
You can never start too soon. Don't mess with the IRS.
What do you need?
Well, I'm gonna need some really important forms. I think it sounds like it's like a 403B, pretty 406H. That's what we're looking for.
Oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah. This is gonna do it. This is gonna do it. You're lucky to have me as a friend. You really are. I'm gonna go TurboTax this thing or something.
wait, you don't even pay your taxes!
One night with Nefarious!
Well, that's me. I hate complicated things, which is why I've always been called simple and easy my entire life. I live by a simple motto. If anything requires too much effort or any sort of thought, well, it can't be that important, can it?
Hey babe, did you feed the cats?
They're natural predators, honey. Nothing to worry about.
Did you pay the electric bill?
Huh. Life is hard enough as it is. The 406H totally gets this. It's a simple device for simple people. Now I know what you're thinking. What does this guy mean, simple? I mean, does he even know what he's talking about? No, not really. No. What I mean is, this is Android, and because of that, this process can be as simple or as complex as you need it to be, much like a loving relationship with your dearest cat. Feel like just having some old systems close by? Download RetroArch from the App Store and throw some games on an SD card. Voila! But Nefarious, I want NES games. What do I do? All you need is an NES emulator. Just like that. And if you want Android games, well, even I know how to use a cell phone. And that's how you do it. Its convenience even extends to its weight. I can carry this thing anywhere. It can be in my back pocket as I run from responsibility, or right by my bedside as I sleep off reality. We can't have fun if we're thinking too much. And thanks to the 406H, well, I haven't thought for hours. This is going to make a great stocking stuffer, or a gift for somebody who really just needs their childhood back, and a little bit of retro. I hope you found this helpful. And to everybody, have a good evening.
now that I wrestled this handheld back from Nefarious before you could actually send it to the IRS, let's get back to the gameplay testing. The Unisoc T820 is going to allow you to play a very solid amount of games and game systems. Of course, NES games will play very well, and you have plenty of headroom for shaders and filters as you see fit. So let's actually skip ahead to the higher systems. GameCube was able to run at a native resolution just fine, but when I jumped it up to a 2x resolution, I started to experience some slowdown. Switching to high performance mode in the 406H's quick menu did seem to help a bit, but it wasn't a perfect solution. PS2 using the Nether SX2 emulator showed mixed results as well. Ratchet & Clank mostly ran fine, but there was some slowdown here and there that did manage to break the immersion. Simpsons Hit and Run, on the other hand, ran just fine, and these joysticks were actually pretty darn good for controlling the vehicles in this game. This was probably the best Simpsons experience I've had on a retro handheld. Take that, Principal Skinner. Lightweight PS2 games will also look and feel good even at a native resolution. If you're adventurous, you could even get some light Nintendo Switch emulation in, but I would definitely consider this system a bonus, as not all games will look good with that 4:3 aspect ratio. There were also a bunch of games that wouldn't load or would just crash, and the state of Nintendo Switch emulation on Android is also not the best right now. 3DS emulation, however, was fairly impressive. I did bump this up to a 2x resolution using the Vulkan back end, and the only downside was having to deal with small screens or having to switch back and forth between those screens. However, if you stick to games that are primarily single screen games, you should have a pretty good experience playing 3DS on this device. I also had a decent time with Android gaming on this device. While I didn't try the higher end stuff like Genshin, there are a lot of games on the Play Store that will run very well on this device. I actually recommend checking out Google Play Pass as it's a small $5 monthly subscription, and there's some very fun games on there. I've even beaten a Play Pass game or two on a retro handheld this year. Now it's time to wrap things up with my final thoughts, starting with the positives. The Anbernic RG406H is a nice device to hold. It doesn't weigh too much, as Nefarious mentioned, and it feels comfortable for long play sessions. In fact, this device rivals or maybe even beats the Retro Pocket Mini for comfort. It also has a screen that is just the right size, making the mini screen seem small by comparison. I found that the 406H had the perfect screen size for 4x3 content, and my old man eyes were able to focus on it a little bit more than on the Retro Pocket Mini, even though the Mini still has that gorgeous AMOLED screen. At $167, this handheld is cheaper than the Mini, but is still fairly performant when it comes to emulating higher-end systems. 3DS emulation in particular surprised me on this handheld, and for 3DS games that rely on mostly a single screen, this could be a very solid performer. However, it's on that performance point that I want to bring us into the negatives. This device might be a hard sell compared to something like the Retro Pocket Mini, simply because the Mini has a Snapdragon processor, leaving this T820 a little underpowered by comparison. This means on those higher end systems, you're stuck emulating at a native resolution in order to maintain full speed, and with something like Nintendo Switch, you're really limited to those lower end indie titles. This device is just on the cusp of being pocketable, but those joysticks are just a bit too tall, making this more of a backpack device instead. For those who prefer pocketability over performance, this might not be the right handheld. And finally, I know it's a me problem, but I don't care for the start and select button placement on the right side of the device. I wish they were able to put them on the top left and right of the device to make them easier to access. Overall, however, I do feel that this is a pretty impressive offering by Anbernic, but I worry that other handhelds are going to overshadow this one. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device you are considering, and what do you think is the best use case for a device like this? And please feel free to continue the conversations on both the Retro Handhelds and the Steam Machine Discords, where you can find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show like these wonderful people on the screen, you can do so by going to my Patreon page. Links for all those places are in the description. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow and allows me to get more content out to you. Until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.